This is More Money with economist Steve Moore. Now, Steve Moore.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC Talk Radio. I'm so pleased to have one of my heroes on, and I'm talking about Scott Walker, the former governor of Wisconsin, who did an amazing job reforming that great state. Governor, thanks so much for joining.
Hey, Steve. Glad to be on with you.
So tell us what you're doing with Young Americans for Freedom.
Well, we're training the next generation of leaders in the fight for freedom. So we're programs, conferences. We have kids out at the Reagan Ranch, the Reagan Boy at Home, the National and Washington, D.C., more campus lectures than anyone else in the country. And we put
I've done some of those. I've done a number of
those. Spectacular part of that.
It's amazing. It's just amazing the turnout you get and a lot of them come up and say, gee, I've never heard these ideas before.
Well, it's exactly right, because we take those and then we broadcast them. We have on YAF TV, our YouTube channel, we have more than 1.7 million subscribers.
Oh, my gosh.
Last year we exceeded 1.4 billion views. So there's a hunger out there. In fact, people are interested in YF.org. You don't have to be a kid to watch all that good stuff, but if you have one, get them pointed in our direction.
Yeah, you don't have to. I mean, I think adults benefit from those lectures as much as anyone. So congratulations on the amazing job you've done with YAF. I know you have Art Laffer, who's my co-author of my book, The Trump Economic Miracle, and one of the most famous economists in the world. Who are some of the other people that you get to speak on campuses, including yourself, of course?
Tremendous mix of folks. So I said it goes from Ben to Ben. So from Ben Shapiro, who talks extra fast, to Ben Carson, who's a little bit slower pace, both of which are equally as profound. Mike Pompeo, we get the Katie Pavlich, all sorts of folks, from Fox and Newsmax, but also podcasts, Michael Knowles, Matt Walsh, just this long array of really outstanding folks, and particularly those ones I mentioned who are big on podcasts. Those are extremely popular with students on campus. We'll get anywhere from hundreds to thousands that watch in person. And then like a Ben Shapiro might honestly get, one of our YouTube broadcasts had as many as 28 million people watch a YouTube
Wow.
short of him. So it's big numbers.
God, that's amazing. Well, let's talk about campuses for a minute then. It looked like we were making a lot of progress on campuses, in the last 20 years. And then we saw the craziness of what happened, over the last recent months, where I don't know if maybe it's just the left makes more noise, but I think people were so discouraged about what they saw in terms of the protests and so on.
Right, all the encampments.
And look, I think everybody has a right to protest. I'm a big, and as you are, I look, everyone has a right to protest, and you can take whatever position you want. But I think that they've just shutting down the campuses was really outrageous.
Well, particularly when, for example, I know this well, at the University of Wisconsin, all the campuses in my state, it's against the law. The state statutes explicitly prohibit overnight camping on campuses without approval. And so many of these chancellors and leaders just let students, because of their, siding with many of their beliefs, take over these campuses, run roughshod, and avoid the law. I'm like you. You want to hold a protest? Go ahead. I had 100,000 protested. I didn't block them from
right.
protesting.
You know what that's like, right? Right.
Yeah. You can protest, but don't block. Particularly troubling is, we have UCLA as an example, had a big encampment. The leader of our YAF chapter there, or YF chapter, Matt Weinberg, is a Jewish student. He was blocked from going to class. That's a whole different thing than protesting. You intimidate, you stop, you threaten the safety of other students on campus. That is dead wrong. We have to push back on that. The good news is we do continuous polling of college and high school age students, and that's not reflective of the nationwide. That is just like it is in the electorate, radicals who get all the attention from so much of the media, when in reality, most students are just trying to figure it out, like most voters are.
So I'm talking to Governor Scott Walker, who was governor for 8 years in Wisconsin and did so much to turn around that state. He is one of my heroes. I think if you're a conservative, he's got to be one of your heroes as well. One of the interesting things that you did, Governor, is you ran against Donald J. Trump in 2016 in the presidential race. And I don't know how well you've gotten to know Donald Trump, but it was, who would have thought when we had that amazing field of incredibly great Republicans, probably the best field we ever had, with people like you and Jeb Bush and so many people I admire, Ben Carson. And out of that field comes Donald Trump. Who would have ever thought it? But what do you think? I mean, you've seen it all firsthand. Now he may be on the cusp of one of the greatest political comebacks in American history. What is it about him that attracts so many millions of Americans?
Well, he's the real deal. I mean, good,
right.
bad, and everything in between.
Yeah,
There's times when I wish he wasn't entirely himself, when he'd tone a little bit, I would say a little bit of Reagan, he'd be in a landslide, but that's not him. He is who he is. And so I loved this week, when he was in Green Bay, that's the night when he pulled out of the garbage truck, and I just said that it not just him doing.
He's a real showman, isn't he?
Oh, and then coming up on stage, and just the pure self-awareness of him joking about, still wearing that vest up on stage, to me just was like, particularly for young people, it's authentic. He said, they tell you I look skinny, I look thinner, so I'm going to wear this. People get that. They understand that they're tired of politicians just saying whatever they need to think. Mm-hmm. So I think that's very appealing. Again, there are times when he says other things, I'm like, oh, please, Mr. President, just rein it in a little bit. But I love more than anything, I think you do too, is he's not intimidated. We need somebody in Washington who's just going to take on the establishment, take on the mess. We've had high taxes and high spending, out of control government, and we just need to rein that in. And I think that's what the voters in the primaries certainly found appealing. I was smart. I got out before I got a nickname. I could see where things were headed. But along the way, I just think that's been incredibly impactful. The one thing I'll say again when I'm rallying with him, even tonight, is life was better when Ronald Reagan was president. That's just an undisputed truth. Prices were lower. The border was more secure. Public safety was less of a concern. Life was better when Trump was president.
Yeah, no question about that. And that's what I have a book out now. You're probably familiar with it, that Laffer and I just wrote about, called The Trump Economic Miracle. And we show statistically, no matter what statistic you want to look at, that things were a lot better. So we're not making this stuff up. So how does, I got to ask you, Governor, how does Wisconsin, my prediction is whoever wins Wisconsin may well be the winner of this election. So I know you still, go ahead.
Yeah, you're totally right about that. Yeah, you're dead on. And that is the closest of swing states out there. In the last two elections, less than 25,000 votes out of a state of nearly 6 million was the difference between Trump winning and then the second time Biden winning. And that was the key. If he'd won, whoever won Wisconsin, each of those two elections carried the vote, carried the day. And my hope is it is razor thin again. My hope is that there's enough people in Wisconsin like me who've seen my gas go up $1.25, a gallon over the last 4 years, who've seen our kids' mortgage go up by nearly $1,000 a month, who've seen all these other concerns out there, that's enough. Because the flip side is the left has got a huge financial advantage. Packers games, they must run 10 or 12 more ads per Trump ad than on the Harris side than they do on the Trump side. And yet we're still in the thick of it because the issues matter. Yeah,
I was just at a wedding outside of Philadelphia 2 weekends ago, and we turned on, one of the football games. And I experienced the same thing. I don't know where the left gets so much money. I don't know where the Democrats get it, but it would seem like there were 3 times as many ads for Kamala Harris as they were for Trump. And so we're being outgunned money-wise, probably 2 to 1. And even in the congressional races too. Where do you think they get so much money?
Oh, I think for all the talk of unity and joy, it's pure hatred for Donald Trump. Most of it driven by the elected officials, by the fact that he just outpaces them, that they can't stand somebody that they can't control, that they can't intimidate. And then I think that's reflected then in all the things they say and do, for a couple days after that egregious first attempted assassination. We saw momentarily a little bit of easing, but since then it's only gotten worse. And again, so we can relate to, we understand that in Wisconsin. You remember at the height of the protests and the riots,
I do.
Occupation of our capital, they called me Hitler, they called me Nazis, that sort of stuff. But when you start saying things, going beyond just that, but saying, the fate of the world is dependent on, not just I disagree, things are going to go in the wrong direction, but you send these signals to people that that somehow, this is, again, there's no question why they use the word Hitler. I would never use that. Hitler was the evil incarnate here in this world. I don't want anyone, I don't want any of my political opponents to be in that category, because that's just a whole different universe. But that's
so you just mentioned
how they raise all this money.
You just mentioned something that, I'll never forget, which is when you were governor and so courageously stood up for your values and the principles and positions you'd taken. And for those who are not familiar or don't remember this, you had a storming of the Capitol and basically an occupation of the Capitol. And I don't recall the press calling that an insurrection.
No, in fact, Pelosi actually tweeted about it, encouraging the people who are doing it. So the irony is, I remember Mark Thiessen wrote a piece a few years later saying, Democrats were for occupying a Capitol,
I know,
they were against it.
And by the way, that your life was threatened, right?
Repeatedly.
Yeah.
Death threats against me, my family, my wife. One said they were going to gut my wife like a deer. It was horrible. But it's all about intimidation.
How long did that last?
Well, the protest itself in the Capitol was just shy of a month. So much different than just shy of a month. And then
a month?
Really the ongoing protest lasted all the way through the recall election.
Oh, my God. Amazing. Well, one last question on the way out, Governor. Well, two last quick questions. We got about literally a minute and a half left. Number one, what is the first thing that you think Donald Trump should do when he wins and gets into office?
Well, I'd love to have an order to just release a major part of the bureaucracy in Washington, but that won't happen in the first moment. But I'd love for him to take action on the border. I think right now,
yes,
restoring all the things that he had put in place before, the executive actions that Biden and Harris took apart. Obviously, you and I are economic advocates, and there's a long list of things I want him to do, including cutting more taxes. But I think right away, get that border secure as quick as you can.
Well, I guarantee you he's going to do that. And then second question is, how do people find out more? Are you a 501c3 at Young Americans?
We are.
How can people find out more and donate to your amazingly important cause?
YAF.org, YF.org. Or if you like the Reagan movie, we actually have a site that takes you to all the stuff we did with the Reagan movie, ReaganRanch.com. All those outdoor scenes were filmed at the ranch where our kids get to go all the time.
Thank you, Governor. That's Governor Scott Walker, the great former governor of the state of Wisconsin, and someone who is running one of the most important organizations in America. It's YAF.org?
Yep.
YAF.org. Okay, thank you very much, folks. This is the More Money Show, and we'll be right back.